this moment in the world, in this galaxy under the comet Neowise in the 2020.
Cultura mediante.
Yeah, you're our guide now. You know, follow you. Can you tell us which direction we can take to understand you, to follow you in your work?
Okay. You really want an answer?
Or a question? No, an answer, but just like
I don't mind one bit. I can take this.
Perhaps, Felipe, you may explain what is this about?
Okay.
Is it necessary?
Not bad. Well, this is a series of dialogues that we started like 4 months ago, along with Martin Vaquero. And the idea was just to talk about what we're doing, what we're thinking during these special days. And also, during the last weeks, it's been growing a lot. And also, it's like a place to share the works that we are doing, especially around sound poetry and sound art, but not exclusively. So we can talk about painting, visual poetry, digital poetry, whatever. And every session is focused on one poet or a group of poets or a project. So for today, we organized this session with a PM, it's called PM Records or PM Discos.
Discos PM.
Yeah, Discos PM. And one of the most important participants in this project is the poet and artist Cecilia Vicuña. The PM project, Poesía y Música, Poetry and Music, it's a project that was created by Martin Gavins, Federico Eisner, and Gonzalo Enriquez. He's not today. And they have put together a lot of people, first in Chile, and then in Latin America and other parts of Europe also, around the different relationships between poetry and sound and music, and also
2 días de no dormir, así que estoy con una caña que te la encargo. Así que
I will shut everyone.
Not everyone, yeah.
Yeah, because there must be, there can be lots of. I will especially silence Martin Gavins. No, I will, for this first part, it's better that we shut down our microphones, except for Martina and Federico and Cecilia, that you will talk about this project. And then we can do whatever we like. We can talk, we can explain other projects, other ideas that we have these days. And sometimes we end with a performance and an improvisation, whatever it happens. It usually takes around 2 hours, less or more, depending on our mood. So thank you very much, Martin, Federico, and Cecilia. We are really glad to have you all here. So maybe Martina, Federico can start presenting the project. And
would you like to say something?
Yeah, of course. Some weeks ago, we explained something to some of you, but there's new people also. This is as Felipe says, is a festival since 2014. And in this, with 3 versions, and especially in the second on 2016 and the third on 18, we made a great effort to register in a great and professional quality, which is all the performances, which is one of our goals and visions about giving good technical support to our festival and to poetry or performatic poetry or whatever you call it. And Cecilia was made the opening of 2016 together with the musician, musicologist, and artist, really amazing artist, Jose Perez de Arce. And they made this beautiful opening. The beginning of that performance is one of the tracks that we uploaded last week called Abra Ritual. I don't know if everyone already has the links. I don't know if we share it, but we should. So you can hear later the tracks and the albums that we uploaded. And we are really happy about being giving to this project, which is a side, you could call it, project of the festival, and a way also to share a lot of material that we don't want to be hidden in our hard drives. Of course, many of these materials are already in YouTube since 2 or 4 years ago. But what we are doing now is making a digital distribution of the materials in all the typical mainstream platforms. All right. And we think that gesture of making available this kind of materials in the mainstream platforms is also political to put in circulation that kind of different expressions related to music. We are really happy and thankful with Cecilia to have the time to share with us. I would like to also introduce to you and give the welcome to Marcela Parra, who is for the first time in this group. She is also one of the artists, musician and poet, part of this of this first camade of Discos PM with her album El sonido no coincide con la imagen. The sound doesn't coincide with or doesn't fit with the image. It's something like that. I don't know the translation. And we also will share it with you. And so we hope to talk mainly with Cecilia, but with Marcela too after that. And Martin, maybe you can say something more about Cecilia. You are a great friend.
I just wanted to mention that Festival PM is aimed at gathering different ways of expression around sound, word, music, poetry, together in a space with high quality, as high as possible, technical means, and to offer them a stage to show their work in conditions reserved to.
We are losing you, Martin. We are losing you.
Martin, your connection is not good.
Shows.
Can you repeat, please?
And this net label comes from that project in terms of the variety and... ¿Ahí me escuchan?
Ya, ahora sí, pero está sonando más o menos.
Pero la performance está maravillosa, felicitaciones. The sound performance was great, congrats.
¿Hasta dónde llegué? ¿Hasta dónde se escuchó?
Net label.
Net label. Este net label surge de ese espíritu de reunir distintas formas de expresión que van desde una clásica musicalización de poesía
English.
hasta well, this net label wants to gather together different types of art around the world in music. That is not me. Well, so for the first launch, we are offering 2 collections, one live at Festival PM, and the other is a collection of, and from the first collection, we've hired 2 incredible poets from Chile to give a start to this project. One of those is Cecilia Vicuña, performing at Festival PM on 2016. At the times of the Foro Escritores, we've been meeting and having this together, creative and performing and different things. We've felt always very close to her for different with us to accept being part of this catalog, giving us a really difficult task of keeping it at this very high level that we think we've reached on this first occasion. So Cecilia is here, and
Martin.
We go directly to the performance.
Stop.
Absolutely.
Shut down your video. Martín.
Martín, apaga el video mejor para que te escuchemos bien.
We can translate in telepathic
here, and this particular experience with ¿Me escuchan?
Yeah.
No.
No. Yo lo apagué hace rato.
Eso, ahí sí.
¿De quién es eso?
It's lovely. Es bacán.
Sí, pero no podemos escuchar bien, así que dejémoslo para después. Please leave sorry. Let's leave the sounds and the music for the second part, because we can't hear very much with Martin's bad connection and also the noises. Thank you.
I think Martin is not here in this moment.
See, I am here.
Ah, okay, go on.
Yeah,
No, Cecilia, I just had asked Cecilia to join us in the conversation. Cecilia, would you like to join us to the conversation? Tu micrófono, Cecilia.
Yeah.
Tienes que activar el micrófono.
Okay.
No, you have to activate again. Ah, yeah.
Ahí sí,
Nice.
¿o no? Ahí sí, Cecilia, ¿o no?
Welcome, Cecilia.
¿Digo algo?
Ahí sí,
Sí.
eso.
Justo está hirviendo mi tetera, momento.
Maybe it wasn't a keyboard, it was the kettle. Those were the noises.
Yeah, I think that everybody know the work of Cecilia, but the people that like more close to her, they work around all his body, sound, pictures, installation, objects, shamanic states, rhythm. One time we saw her making rain into the middle of the land, and his art is really her art is really connected with all the cosmos and the nature and all the elements. I don't know, it's really like a total art in a way for me, and coming from poetry. And I think like Martin Gavi said before, it's like we feel really close to her in a way. It's like, that is why I start saying like you're like the comment that can give us space, a new space to go beyond the boredoms of poetry. And I don't know if you want to talk or want to like talk some question, but I think how you connect that, Cecilia, the stars, the earth, your heart, the tetera bullendo. How can you put together all that different elements? Because you're really awakened. I feel that kind of awakening in your art. Then maybe tell us which is the alchemical formula for that.
Okay, I will.
All right.
Mhm.
That's you?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, that was my first love, my first boyfriend. And as you can see, he was far bigger than me, but he thought I was a little hen, so he kept guard on me. And if that's a little adobe house in La Florida. At the time, La Florida was
Wonderful.
a space of wilderness.
Yeah.
Our home was surrounded by forests and lagoons and chacras, meaning large orchards. And if you ask me, how did I grow up? I was taken care of by the animals in the area. I was taken care, especially by the sapitos de cuatro ojos, the four-eyed frogs. And they could sing every night the minute the sun would hide itself in the horizon. They began. And so if you ask me, how did I learn what needed to be learned, was by being naked. My mother, who is an Indian, she thought that clothes was detrimental. So whenever possible, even in winter, the minute the sun shone, all the kids naked and barefoot and naked. And so my principal connector to the universe during the day was the acequia. We had a big irrigation canal that ran through our garden. And that's of course where the sapitos lived. And that's where I bathed my dolls. And I was perpetually playing with the light and the sound of the acequia. So what I needed to hear was there for me. What I needed to see was there. And the most important factor is that nobody was controlling me. Nobody cared, because I was a little girl, and little girls belong to a species called invisible person. So it's a wonderful species if you know what to do with it, because you can escape notice. And by escaping notice, I was able to keep my spirit alive.
Wow.
Cecilia, and this work we are now including in the Discos PM collection. Can you tell us about that work together with Jose Pérez de Arce and how that connects with your poetry, even with your first poetry in this case?
Well, I have many ways of answering that story. And I will just pick arbitrarily one of them, because I am in New York, and I was determined to be a non-singer by the women in my family, because my grandma, who was a Tiaquita Indian, she didn't know she was an Indian, and she was an opera singer, so she sang with this fine voice. And my mother, who wasn't allowed to become a singer, always sang at home with also a divine voice. So both of them, I couldn't carry a tune and reproduce sounds that were given or commanded. And so I grew up with the idea I am not a singing person. But sometime in the 60s, I noticed that certain sounds wanted to come out from me. And in the late 60s and early 70s, there was one person in the world that was Ono Yoko. That's how the Japanese say it, Yoko Ono. And I happened to hear some of her chirridos, some. So those terrifying chillidos, I don't know how even to say that in English, that she
Shrieks?
Streaks? No,
It's like shrieks.
Tricks. Well, everybody who has heard Yoko Ono when she's not doing rock but doing her own thing, then you know what I mean. So it took probably a few seconds for me to hear that. And also I heard Violeta Parra, who El Gavilan, and so I was probably, I don't know, 15, 14, when I heard these things, and I knew that sort of holler, shall we call it holler, was coming from that deep wound that women have from having been wounded thousands of years ago and still being wounded right now. And there's so much beauty in that, and so much power in that naked shout of pain and joy and delirious force. And so there was no choice for me. That was there. But since nobody thought anything of that, it sort of went asleep. And I will not tell you the full story because this is not the place. So I will bring Jose Perez in. So many years go by. I am now an old woman, and I happen to be visiting Santiago. And my book La Vicuña had been published. And no, it's not true. My book La Vicuña was being written. I was writing that book, and that's a book that I wrote in many trips to the Andes, to the high lands of Peru and Bolivia. And so I heard in a conversation that there was a wonderful exhibition at a new museum called el Museo Chileno de Arte Precolombino, the Chilean Museum of Precolumbian Art. And the person telling the story of this new museum started to say things that were part of my unpublished poems. And they were about the language of the feathers. The language of the feathers, because part of the listening to the animals is listening to the language of the animals, especially the birds. And the birds communicate in so many ways, not just through the sound of their voice or their song, but also through the reflections of their feathers. And so these iridescent feathers would be directed especially by the male hummingbirds. And I observed that both in Peru and in Chile. And once I knew that, how they were converting the rays of light into a language that would speak to the females. So the females would pick their mate by the force of the light coming from the breast of that male hummingbird. And so some of these things were being said in the story, and I said, my God, I have to go to the museum. And she said, oh, I can introduce you to the person. And this was the designer, the speaker of the story was the designer of the catalog that Jose Perez had created. And it was the catalog about the feathers. And so I ran to the museum and want to speak to Jose Perez. He lets me in. We were not introduced by anyone. I just walked in. And in no time, Jose and I were involved in the most beautiful conversation about sound and about sound in the Andes. And we never spoke about the feathers. And so next thing I knew, he introduced me to Claudio Mercado, same thing, huge, wonderful, extraordinary meeting, conversation. This is happening sometime in the mid to late 80s. And so I think we can play in time, because that was the time when the feather exhibition was. So I can't say exactly, I don't remember, but I know it was in the 80s. Well, in any case, so the first work that we did together was the music of Paracas. And we began improvising and recording instantly. We never talked about it. I just, probably said, I want for us to do together the music of this film that I have created. And it doesn't have the music, and the music must be completely improvised in his office at the Museo Precolombino. The three of us crammed inside under the table. And that's where this incredible song between us began.
Wow, tremendo. Cecilia, your career is vast, and the spectrum of your work is immense. And but I think in these sound performances, you can get a connection with the place and the people around you that is very particular. And what do you think about that, and your experience at Festival PM in special?
Well, first of all, you gave me a place of honor by inviting me to open a festival. And I have been to many festivals in my life, but back in 2016, I had never been invited to open a festival. Plus, it was in Santiago, where I have always been up to that time more or less ignored or completely ignored. And my mother was in the room. So if you hear that Abra Ritual, and at the time, if this was 4 years ago, my mother would be 92. And so to have all of you gathered there and my mother present, suddenly I was overcome by tremendous emotion. Plus, I was going to perform with Jose Perez, and I know that each time that Jose and I do anything together, something happens that is not planned, given, calculated, discussed. Is something that comes when we completely open up. And so my method in whatever I have been doing in art in my life consists of not thinking, of emptying myself completely. Since I grew up naked, I know how to be naked. And so I think this nakedness, if you are a Western person, like we all are Western people, however mestizos or Indian we may be, and we are Westernized. And so this nakedness is probably the most difficult thing because it's unprotected, it's vulnerable, it's nothing. So it's learning to be absolutely nothing, to be less than dirt. And if you're less than dirt, then you are in the cosmos. See, everything in the cosmos is less than dirt. So you're equal to whatever is, and therefore anything is possible. And so it is a practice that I highly recommend, but I would not know how to teach it.
Anybody wants to?
Yes, it's
Please.
beautiful, Cecilia, that because it's like, the quarks, the most little particle in the universe, or the invisible things, or like that kind, or same a virus in a way, it's kind of like you don't see it, it's around us, and it's like it's more fake than fake and more truth than truth in a way. And how you can feel, because you're a healer with your sound, with that connection with things, and you heal us like every time. I remember for the festival PM, you make our how you say that in English, face maquillaje, no?
Yeah.
And that's what, wow, I was with my colega Paulo, like, wow, we are, yes, go on, it's the moment to start. And like how you can like put some colors to our face to go face to that kind of pandemia state, or
Oh, I forgot to turn off the phone.
Nice view anyway.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear what you asked.
it's not like a kind of question. It's just like when you say like you connect with nothing, and you make like a kind of voidness in in all your connection between your soul, your spirit, your body, your nakedness, your fragility. And in those moments of collective fragility, collective state of nakedness that that pandemic state gave us to us, we as poets, what kind of training we can do with you in a way, like it's just like sharing you with us your healing powers, or techniques, secrets. I don't know.
Yes, I think, you see, the virus is not dead or alive. It's like in an intermediate state. So I suppose it seeks life for reasons that are as ancient as this earth. Virus and bacteria have interacted with whatever we are. So with the arrival of this virus, we are re-entering the space of complete unknowing. And if we are going to make it as a species, is by going fully and wholeheartedly into this space of unknowing, of not pretending that we can control this, that we can do this, that we can do that. But we know certain things that are so deep in our knowing that we have forgotten them, which is the immense love that emerges from every living cell, because how else to name? Every living cell wants to live, you know, and even those who are not alive, they still want to live, like the virus itself. So I think it's a huge teaching for us, and to learn what is it that is alive in us that these viruses, need. If we can give rein, give ourselves completely to what it, the living force in us, wants, we will get a guidance that we cannot seek any other way. I think that is my response, you know.
Yeah, it's nice. It's like that kind of moment that you put before you start your performance, and you are connected you with that kind of silence and like a kind of little sounds. In French, they say chuchotement, like really like and you connect that kind of frequency that you have, kind of like in the infinite little things to the total state, and same as technical in a way, you know, when you make like installation and at the same time you perform in the middle of your installation. What is for you is you start with sound, with objects, with text. What is your process, creative process for making a poem?
Well, I think it all comes from that wilderness in which I existed in the wilderness until I was 9 years old, which is a long time. And by the time I was 9, my family decided it's time to civilize these kids. And so they brought us into Santiago. And that was my first exile, to be extracted from the life of the plants, the life of the forest, the life of the animals and creatures, and to come to live in a nice neighborhood in Santiago de Chile. And I suppose that even in the wilderness, my father had a fantastic library. And my family, as you probably know, is a family of artists. So I was exposed to the existence of the pencil and the existence of a piece of paper where you can draw and write from the very beginning. And my father also loved music. My mother sang at home. And so there was always this exposure to multi-dimensions of art and poetry around me. And nobody would say, this is art, this is poetry, this is a sculpture, this is this. They just let the kids play with everything. And that gave me complete freedom. This is related to what I was saying before, that nobody said, this is a painting, this is. So for me, all of them, all of it, all is equally available, because there was no instruction ever of any kind. They just let me be with it, play with it. And therefore, I suppose I learned to find the teaching of the material themselves. As I was saying, you have to learn what it wants, what the life force within you wants. And once you tune in to that, it interacts with you and begins to respond, to speak. You see, because everything in the world is entangled, everything in the world is interdependent. And this is no theory, this is actually how it is. And I can tell you that the materials, even a pencil, see, I have written poems about the little noise that the pencil makes when the pencil touches the paper. So paper and pencil meet like our feet meet with soil I also have poems about how the soil and the feet meet, what happens between them, and so forth, how the wind touches your waist, and so forth. So everything in this cosmos that we live is in an act of making love and killing each other as well. So it is, that's the way it is. It's not something special or different or weird. It's just is.
Cecilia, I'd like to ask you, coming back to your performance some years ago at Festival PM, what do you think about this possibility to share that that magic moment, that experience, along with people from other places that weren't there that day, and also what kind of things are lost during that process? Of course, it's not the same to just listen to the sound instead of being there in that precise moment, in that precise place. And of course, I would like also to know what Martina and Federico can say about it, and with the other performances that they recorded and they are putting, uploading in internet so we can share them again.
Yeah, I mean, getting back to that moment, I was there to listen, to hear, because I don't think I had ever been to a festival of poetry and music in Chile. So it was my first occasion to hear everybody. And I stayed on from beginning to end to hear everybody. I heard Martin, I heard everybody. And it was a wondrous thing to discover that you were bringing forth a whole universe of people who were doing something that I would otherwise not know because I don't live in Chile. So I think what you were giving to all of us was a huge gift, the gift of hearing each other. Because one of the drawbacks of the current way in which the art world is and the poetry world is that we are alone most of the time. Like every citizen in the world now is alone most of the time. And I don't think human beings were meant for that. It's wonderful to be alone. I love my silence, my solitude, I treasure, and I couldn't exist without it. But that has always to be conjoined by the collective, by participating in something that is many bodies, joined together, squeezing together. And there's a particular energy. And in that room, if you remember that evening, there was this beautiful, bubbling, dark energy. And dark because Chile, this was before the estallido social, before the revolution of last year. Chile at the time was a very dark place. And so everybody in this room is desiring, seeking music as you go to a fountain to drink water. People, when deprived with a daily contact with art and poetry, they're thirsty for it. So that is far more so, I would say, in Latin America than in let's say, the first world, Europe or the US, where people are more blasé, and therefore they do not relate so much through their bodies, through the physical embrace of seeing each other. And I see your eyes are always having funny thoughts. I can see your thoughts. You are thinking of this, of that, and I cannot see exactly what you're thinking, but that's not the point. The point is that I can see you. You are like in many places at once, and this person is doing that, and the child is crying. So this disorder, this delicious chaos was present, and I contribute to the chaos by the way I perform. You see, people expect that you would show up in the stage, and I never do that. I began to not do that very early on, probably 30, 40 years ago. And I realized what it does. It sort of breaks the spell of the superiority of the academy. It breaks the spell of thinking that somebody knows better than you do. And it puts you, and a friend of mine who's a wonderful poet wrote that she was present at one of my performances, and her thought, I'm sure it's the thought of everybody when I begin to do that, who is this crazy woman interrupting the performance, you see? So that already puts me in my place, you know? And so that's a very good beginning.
And Martin and Federico, what can you tell us about this idea of sharing not a recording like Marcela Parra's recording, which was produced in a studio, but a live recording of a performance, along with other poets and musicians also.
Yeah, of course it's partial. We all know that. But maybe I would like to comment about, we have to make quite edition of the opening of Cecilia, because there was some problems with the mic Cecilia used at that occasion, and in some moments of the recording we had like big problems of audio with the chase, and I took that difficult task and the discussion of to what point you can manage some of the parameters of the sound, of audio parameters, not to break the connection with a former, to not say original, but to the performance, no? So, and it's a hard and impossible task. It makes you think about all the manipulation of sound mainly in the industry, of course, no? And what we are hearing in the radios, in the broadcast, and etc. No? Made me think a lot about it, and in the value of Martin was really convinced of the importance of publishing that opening. It's all the video. No, we don't have the video yet of that moment.
You have put videos of the festival as well.
Yeah, but that part is filmed, but it's not published on video yet.
Okay.
We want to do that in some time more, but it's a performance when Cecilia enters from the public, from the audience, singing, as she said, to her mother, to other people in the ear, making a really ritual, a real ritual to all of us, and until she gets to the stage, and made me think a lot about what are we doing with sound, and what is transmitting. I don't have the answers. I mean, in this process that I had to do together with the team, with Martin mainly, we have to decide. We have to lower some parts that had a lot of turbulence, for instance, of vocal turbulence, or some problems like that. No? and in those decisions there are a lot of questions about what this sound can make, how it gets to us, the medialization of the arts, of the poetry in this case, and the arts.
But on the other hand, it was very important for us to show our capacities in terms of producing a festival and record it in a very high quality, considering obviously the limitations. This is a festival funded by a fund for book fairs. So it was, I mean, the three first editions. The fourth edition, which was meant to be held this next October, this year, is not going to be done, not just because of the pandemic, but because the funds were not given by the state this time. We really tried hard to make it as commercially viable, so we are not dependent on public funds, but it was really, really impossible. We even though we include always forms of art that are more, if you want, popular or digestible, we never lose our standing in experimental art, and performances are then complex sometimes. Even though it's not a sound poetry festival, it's a poetry and music festival, and that difference is very important, because the wideness of shows that you can see there is much bigger than in a sound poetry festival. And but so the recordings are okay, and considering that this is a poetry festival, and we love to show them because we are really convinced that all efforts to give the performer the best possible conditions to do his or her job. I mean, it's important. It's important to try, and this festival looks. I mean, loves that, and so that's why it was so important to show our recordings in ordinary platforms for listening to music, not just from the videos uploaded to YouTube.
I would say to that you have both said, you're saying something that is terribly important, Federico and Martin, and I really admire your struggle, because your standpoint is very fragile, is also in danger of extinction like everything else right now, because it is a rebellion against the homogenization that the industry imposes, you see. So even in these sound festivals, because everybody's using the same electronic tools, let's say, the sound tends to be very homogeneous, more homogeneous than the musicians themselves realize. And so the fact that you brought in poets into the mix, that already changes the structure. It changes the equation. Then these poets are by nature and by definition all rebellious to homogenization. So I think there is a tremendous value to your festival, and if there is no support right now, in time, it may even become a legend that this existed because your act as a group was to give us the platform. And I know the infinite work and labor that you have put into this. And so somehow getting back to that moment of the recording of that night, I think I attended the 3 days, which is very rare when you are a guest in a festival, that a guest wants to be attending everything, because I had the sense that something precious was going on, something that was not the rule, neither in Chile, nowhere else. And so it's an act of of beauty. And in this moment of dissolution, where so many, not only living species are going extinct, but also gestures, qualities of relationship are going extinct. Each one of those gestures of solidarity with each other as creators, as thinkers, has a tremendous radiance, a tremendous gift for all of us.
Well, I was expecting that Federico will say to me that they had overdubbed some tracks or made some.
No.
I very much
It's
to know that you decided
mostly untouched.
that you wanted to capture that precise moment and that spirit of rebellion that Cecilia was talking about. And yeah, but I was thinking while you were talking, it's like when you read a book of translated poetry, and always the translator starts saying, "Well, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that," and lots of people love to criticize translators, but if it weren't for them, I mean, we couldn't read almost anything. And the same goes when you record something, and there might be some problems, as you said, but it's better to do it than to don't do it. So I really appreciate that gesture. Otherwise, we will be complaining all the time and not doing anything. So it's great. And also, I think I mean, for us that we were that day, it's lovely to have a memoir of that moment. But for the people who weren't, it's also an invitation to imagine what was happening. And maybe you can get the image of Cecilia walking around. I don't know, only with the sound, but it's nice to be invited to have that sensation. And
I wanted to say,
please.
Oh, no, thank you, Cecilia, for your words about the festival. You are being so generous to us in all these years. I think that what you say about homogenization is really in the center of our aims. Personally mine. And I wanted to connect it with what you said in the beginning about not bel canto. I love that. Or not a singing person. Me too, I'm not a singing person. Almost like a trauma in my case, I would say. But of course, the relation of poetry and music, we could talk forever about it, but especially about singing, I would like to talk about, because for me it's really a big question, you know? Because there's a word in the last 30, 20 years of the extended vocal techniques. Now you can we can talk of people like La Barbara or Meredith Monk or Fatima Miranda, or many women, also some men. There's a connection with the poetry world, some collaborations. I don't know. I don't know what to ask you about it. It's like proposing you to talk about that world, how this not singing. Some of these performers are singers in the education, but not all of them. And what brings that world? You feel part, a connection to that kind of jobs, of works, of singing or not singing, or extended and expanded voices?
Well, I would say there is a huge difference.
Mm.
And whether I am part of that world or not, while I'm alive, I'm not really part of that. But I don't know what will happen when I am gone. And because what happens to me is that I can tell you that I feel that singing is in our culture, in Western culture, is deeply associated to the word shame. And so when someone doesn't have a good voice and attempts to sing, is immediately shamed by others. So when you speak of trauma, that is universal experience of most kids that are told very soon that they should not sing because they don't know how to sing, etc., etc. I endured the same. We all did. So the case of these ladies that you have mentioned, I can't think of the word now because I'm very tired today. I think it's part of the virus that we are all so tired because it's like we're fighting for our lives, every moment of the day. You go out, you have to wear the mask, you cannot breathe. And so we are perpetually exhausted right now. It's like we're carrying this tremendous weight on our bodies. So I'm forgetting the exact word, but it's the word that has to do with professionalism. So these ladies, not only have they been trained, but they excel. They are excellent at what they do. They are abnormally good. They are extraordinary. They are magnificent. All of that. And I work from the opposite end of that. And the opposite end of that is not non-singing. But it is true that it can be heard as singing. So everything is paradoxical and contradictory. Very often in my performances, people ask me, oh, where were you trained? Trained by who? By the sapitos, the frogs. I mean, trained by, you see, I really didn't receive any training, but I have trained my ear to hear. So is there training? Yes, perhaps there is a sort of self-training that has, and I hear. And I have heard music from all over the world all my life. Actually, my favorite music is probably music that very few people hear. Like, for example, people deep in the forest of, some remote indigenous land or remote in the mountains. And I have had in audiences people come from Mongolia, for example. And I did my DNA, and it turns out that my indigenous ancestors are from Tibet and Mongolia. And they say to me, if I am partly Mongolian or Tibetan, of course I was 12,000 years ago, or but who wasn't? And so this is not very direct, but in any case, there's something in the structure of the larynx, of the human larynx, and of, for example, people who have the heritage, the indigenous heritage. We do share certain configurations that are transmitted generation and are sort of perfected from one generation to the other. And I learned this from Alan Lomax when I was very young and I had just arrived in New York. I heard, does this group know who Alan Lomax is? Alan Lomax is one of the legendary ethnomusicologists of the world who gathered so many of the recordings that now make the Folkways collection, which is probably the foremost collection of ethnic sounds around the world. And he was teaching a seminar, and I was a student in that seminar, hearing, learning, listening. And that's where I learned that the preferred shape that is culturally chosen by a people for a certain tone, for a certain sound, what's the word? Not rainbow, the sound, how is it called? Sound, not scope, the sound, la gama de sonido, how is that called? the the range,
Array? Array?
the range,
Array?
the range sounds. No, you can also say array. That's true. Array of sounds or range of sounds that a culture prefers. So, for example, certain cultures prefer the sounds that are closer to crying. And they favor them, so they become masters at crying, for example. There's a whole culture somewhere in Polynesia that's all about crying as an art. So you begin to learn of so many potentialities of human sound. And in my practice, I have tried, as I said, to go the opposite way of excellence, to the place where these sounds can emerge even if I don't want them.
Yeah. Got it. Thank you.
Then it's not a kind of invocation, it's a kind of reception or transmitting things, like kind of channel of a microphone and a speaker.
Mhm.
Putting something of that. I just like want to ask you, because you told about the PM festival just before, that can be a legend, because we have a kind of group. They have a group. We are a group of people making things together. Like now, by example, it's like a meeting of some poets of the world, and that kind of mystical, I don't know, egregore of the group, going beyond any human or singularity individual goal. And you participated a lot of groups in, when you were younger, like the Tribuno, like the mythical first Fluxus group outside of Europe, I think. No, isn't it? Is that? And all that kind of different, and the work that you publish now with the arts in PM Festival, you work with Murua, with a lot of poets, and really Bertoni, a lot of different people. And how do you feel that kind of connection of when one of only more people, that they put them together to go to an unknown place, in a way, You also are neighbor of Anne Goldman, and you work with her, the kind of so shamanic experience and powerful generation, in a way. It's so like, for our moments in this world, 2020, that kind of freedom that you took in that connection in the 60s and 70s, and from the beginning, at 9 years old, I feel it. How can you say us like a little bit more of those experience of connection with the others?
Yes, I think I have written so much about this because in Western culture, there is the idea that the individual is a genius. And that it is true that there can be individual genius. But it is forgotten that the main genius of humanity is the collective genius, the genius that we are all when we learn how to conjoin. And this was, it is actually a spiritual technology, and it is a political technology that has been very strong throughout the almost 3 million years that we have been human. It has allowed us to survive, and Western culture and capitalist ideas have really eroded the ability to be simultaneously a very distinct individual and be part of a collective, but fully and completely. And so it is a double art to be both. And indigenous cultures have kept that art alive. And it's one of the reasons why I work as often as I can with indigenous communities, because even the young children of indigenous communities are beginning to lose that knowledge of being in a collectivo, in a collective conjoining that knows how to act like one being. And I think for the survival of humanity, this that we're talking about now, this ability to conjoin with others with a purpose, is crucial. If we don't do that, we will never recover power from the horrible forces that now control the planet. We will never be able to save the forest and the glaciers and the oceans, everything that needs not saving. Just we cannot save anything. We can really help them recover and recuperate through their own powers. We can certainly do that by stopping the destroyers. But how are we on Earth going to do that if we don't learn? And that is perhaps one of the gifts that art can give. Because, you know, the tribu no, that, see, I was, how old was I? I believe perhaps 17 or 18 years old, when I had the vision of what a tribu no should be. And I wrote the manifesto, and I designated my friends, look, we are now the tribu no. And my friends looked at me like I was nuts, and they say, okay, and immediately forgot about it. You see? And that is what made the tribu no true. It was really a no tribe, because they had no notion of being a tribe at all. And how did whatever we did together become a legend? You see, there are forces that in our soul, in our human soul, that seek out the stories that feed us. And nobody organizes this, nobody plans it. It just happens. And so I think it is happening now that we're isolated and separated from each other, that, for example, we have come up with the Zoom. You know, we have come up with the clarity that we need each other, that we need to embrace each other. We desperately need that. And if we don't do it, people are going to go nuts. And people are going to start killing each other. And all kinds of terrifying things may happen unless we learn this art of conjoining.
Cecilia, you're saying we are going to help them, like the indigenous people. I just wanted to ask, like, who are we, and what is our responsibility? How can we help them? Because from listening to what you said, you first said we are all West, we are Westerners, and then if we are Westerners, in what capacity we can help, or if we are not, if you are one of them, how are we?
It's a wonderful question, and my idea with regards to exactly that is that yes, we're all Westernized now, and except for a handful of probably a few thousand, but still a handful of tribes that have really kept to their own ways. But we're all indigenous at the same time. We're all indigenous to humanity. And the way we can help each other is through listening. And this is why this sound project is important, because we cannot help anyone unless we hear deeply what is it that they really need. And right now, the indigenous people around the planet are asking us for solidarity. They're asking us to stop the big companies that are funding, because what is happening is that, for example, let's take the example of the Amazon. I'm very involved in that because when I was young in the 70s, I crossed the Amazon by land. You know, I spent like 2 months traveling by canoe, hitchhiking, walking. It was really a most extraordinary experience. So I have a connection with their struggle. And you hear them, and you learn that the people who are working with them are saying plainly that it is our consumer money that big companies are using to burn the forest and to kill the people. So what can we do? We can stop our money from doing such things, for example. You know, how do we do that? Have we been educated on how to conjoin with others to, let's say, to press your bank not to invest in fossil fuels and things like that? we all have to retrain our abilities to conjoin the forces that we know are needed for the survival of the species and the survival of every creature that must survive. Does that help?
Cecilia, I actually was going to ask you what Gazelle asked you a little bit about. How do we take this ability to kind of be the cosmos by being dirt, by being nothing? How we take that and have people respond in the world, because we're creating all this work and we're creating parts of connections with our work, with sound, but how does that instigate change? And you partly answered that a little bit just now, but I'm wondering how this idea of learning with process, having the material teach you it's so beautiful, where you are removing yourself from the material that you're using and letting the material become the material, so that it sort of talks back to you. Is there something there where, I guess I'm wondering about the edge between what we're doing with this whole group and sound people in general are interested in, how you break through that sound, break through that barrier to see if a world can respond, aside from just, I guess I'm asking you to define listening.
How about defining breathing? How about defining the state of not knowing? I think we are at a point where what Gazelle asked and what you ask is the most burning question. It really is, and it is burning because none of us has the answer. But we do have an instinct. All of us have that instinct, not just me. And this instinct is that we do want to survive, don't we? And we know also that we depend on others to survive. So while we're isolated and afraid because the virus can kill us, we don't know yet with what version of a solution we are going to come up with. But we have to dream it, we have to look for it, we have to desire it with our entire being. You, Edwin, you are a wonderful artist. I have been to your performances, and you can mobilize forces just by your rhythm, by the madness of what you do. I have been to more than one of your performances, and you have a son. And so those of us who are fortunate enough to learn from the kids know how to play with an unknown kid in 2 seconds. See? How do they do that? The Indians have a beautiful expression, which is sin abajarse ni subirse. I will try to translate that. So it's like you are in the sidewalk and 2 dogs meet. At a certain distance, they begin to wag their tails to each other, or like that. You see, so something in them knows what is good for them and what is not good for them. We also have that ability. We have forgotten it, but if we pay attention, something in our tummy, something in our hands, in our neural system knows who will be an ally. And in that moment that you're seeking the alliance, that is the moment when you have to practice the Indian slogan, no abajarse, which is don't try to pretend that you are lower than the other person, and don't ever try to pretend to command that person, to tell that person what to do. So if you can find that sort of middle vibration of how about to say just, hello, I'm not about to hurt you. I want to just go along. And so we will have to relearn all those ancient human techniques that allowed people to survive several ice ages. For example, being naked. people survived so many things. So if our human destiny is to survive, we have to dream the ability to open ourselves to some knowings that we probably don't even know we have.
And everyone take off your clothes, please, now.
And I would say something else that I have thought of this very often, and I don't often have the chance to say it. We in the art world and in the poetry world have been trained by the academy to live in a bubble, to live in a world of artists, in a world of poets, and not participate in the other worlds. And I think that bubble has to break. And many artists in the world are breaking it and are working with all kinds of people. And I think there is a great fresh air coming from those encounters. And I have to say that I have learned from such encounters of doing art that is not even called art, with people that couldn't care less if this is called art or not art. The learning that they have given me is really immense.
I have a question that's I'm thinking of you talking here, Cecilia. It's been so wonderful. I'm in Wales, and it's really as if you're on the other side of my desk. And I'm really appreciating this closeness across an ocean. And I suppose I also have a question about that kind of space. And I mean, in the UK, you know, you are a really important figure, and you know, somebody whose work is well known here. And I was wondering what that what that particular transatlantic space has meant for you, or might mean for you. From this side, I'm really hearing the things that you're saying about the thirst for poetry and culture in Latin America, and you made that kind of distinction earlier, and I'm just wondering from your side, if you think across the sea to Europe, are there things that have been or are at present important to you in that space that's made available to us this evening? Yeah.
Thank you. How do I pronounce your name?
Zoe.
Zoe. Zoe. So it's lovely to meet you, Zoe. Yes, I ended up arriving in London when I was a very young girl. I was, I believe, 24 years old. That's when I first went there as a British Council scholar. I had a grant to be there. That's where the military coup caught me when I was about to return to Chile, so I didn't return. And that was the beginning of my great journey. But I have to say that the leap between Chile and London was not as big as the leap between the wilderness of my childhood to the neighborhood of Santiago. That was a leap, you see, because somehow, you see, England, in particular, if we're going to speak of the UK, has trained the world to know a lot about England, while England knows very little about all of us in the world. We know quite a bit about England. We've seen the films, we've read the novels. It's just the constant speaking of themselves that the English are very good at. And so for me to land there what it did for me was to make me feel as such an alien and such an invisible, unwanted alien. And I have to say, I feel the same in the US. It's part of the very white northern hemisphere. But I would say that just as I encountered that, I immediately encountered the Welsh, the Scots, the Irish, the Indians, the exiles from Africa, the exiles from everywhere else. So I somehow found in Europe the, the alternative that was so beautiful. And I think I still am connected with that. That's why you are here with us. Because there is a streak or a strain of when you go into the depth of a mine, you have a streak of gold that rounds the mine. And that streak of connectivity has always existed between the explorers and adventurers of Europe that were not colonizers, that wanted to learn from the so-called colonized. And I think that ability of certain spirits of Europe has been very liberating for people like myself. For example, I have to tell you that when I was 15, more or less, I read the entire Shakespeare, and one of my pilgrimages was to visit his home. And just like that, was he one of the decolonizers? See, he was already taking in the stories of the colony and turning them around to become human stories. And so this streak is mutually nutrient if we open up to it. And as long as we are not sort of minimized or discriminated upon, which is the way the majority treats us. It's a very painful thing. I endure a lot of violence against me in England, but in my heart I have chosen to connect with the other side, the beautiful side I was telling you before.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
because if you connect with us, you are decolonizing the Welsh spirit, decolonizing the Scots spirit, the Irish spirit, and even the local ancient English before they became an empire. There's something, there is a kernel inside that still exists in all of us, and it exists especially in the children. And so the children are really the most precious in this moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone other one want to make a question to Cecilia, Aiden, Chris.
Cecilia, and what's places are important for you? You've mentioned places and that have marked you, but what is home? Where's home? What's your home? In memory, is it an actual place? What's home for you? What's your home?
Well, I suppose that forever home is where you spend your childhood, which is the Andes wilderness. Well, now with the virus, it's the first time that I have not been able to return to Chile, except when the dictatorship, the first few years of the dictatorship, it was too dangerous for someone like me to go to Chile. So I spent a long time without being able to go to Chile. But once I dared, and I did dare, I would say it was like perhaps 5 or 6 years after the coup that I went back for the first time. I have regularly gone to the mountains, and you and I, Martin, we walk the mountains that are sort of inside Santiago, in the little mountains, but still with your dog. And so this connection a los cerros, this connection to the energy of the land in the Andes is very, very powerful. And I feel it even while being thousands of kilometers away. And I have joked that for me, being here is like being among me, like here for me is New York. Is I have sort of made a sort of like la guitarra transpuesta, where you change la guitarra by pushing the tones up. I have done a transposition of the skyscrapers to be my mountains, you see, and so to make the Hudson River my wilderness, and I live next to the Hudson. So wilderness is possible even in the cracks in the sidewalk.
Cecilia, you always make me think at that presocratical poets, like that connecting philosophy with nature, with poetry, and they used to work with the social life, healing village or healing cities or healing cultures. Like I know Empedocles healed Athenas from a great flute of something, creating like a connection of different affluents from different rivers, little river from several sides, in order to dissolve the concentration of the river. At that time, we didn't know about bacteria or something like that. But I think that one of the kind of, I don't know, social or political mission of the poets, to say that is like how we can like contribute to that ritual of transforming pain in poetry. I don't know what's the kind of it's a way that I know in a way, and I feel in your poetry that kind of transmutation, shamanism, transformation, and we talked the other days about translation in a kind of that way. You talk about birds. Your first photo is with like kind of a cock, un gallo, una gallina, and the little sapitos with four eyes, with like telling you all the tongues in the future world. If we have to create something now, like in order to transform that kind of pain or like general pain in the world, the painful state, in and use that force, take the shape of that, and take off the veneno, and just like recover that kind of possibility of transmission or contagion. That is the idea that we have in that group. Do you have an idea like we can do with, maybe we can create an act together?
Well, I do have an idea, which I mentioned before, which is that if uh, we have to begin with ourselves uh, to connect wholly and wholeheartedly with that desire in us to love, to love and be with life itself. And then the next step, you see, I have been doing collective rituals since the 60s, and in the last few years, I have been involved in some very large rituals with a few thousand people, and some medium-sized and small-sized groups. So this idea of working ritually with groups, I have been doing for a very long time. But now we have a new challenge, which is that these rituals are doable and possible when you can be physically in the same place. Right now, for example, one of the few ways in which people can be with each other is in the protests. But the protests are sort of one form, and it cannot be the only form. It must be conjoined by other forms. And you see in the protest that you're able to see online that all kinds of different rituals are beginning to take place within the protests themselves. And so I believe this language is being born right now. And we somehow have to be part of that movement. If I have a concrete idea, um, I don't know, I have thought of different ideas which are probably preposterous and ridiculous, but that have been tried many times. For example, one of the last books that I published is a book called Slow Down Fast, a toda raja. And in that book, I proposed a technique that I learned to do as a little girl, but I really began practicing that here in New York City. And I told it actually in my last Zoom performance with a woman, and which is to stop, parar. And I say parar is the root of paraíso, of paradise. You know, you stop and you lift, you elevate yourself to the state of union, to be united with what is, with others, and so forth. So in that book, I proposed the crazy idea that we all begin to do that. Parar, whatever we're doing, a few times per day, we stop everything and we just go dead. For example, like Shavasana, the corpse position of yoga. I practice that several times per day. But could we do it in a coordinated way where, let's say, we all stop at noon? I said that in that book. Is that stupid? Perhaps. And is that possible? Perhaps. Or would it work if we still do it? Non-coordinated, but we do it. And we spread the word to stop, to allow for this guidance to come in. The tradition, the shamanic tradition, is that for guidance to come in, you have to request it. You have to want it. And not want it with your mind. Not request it with your mind. Request it with your being, what ancient people call the heart. Is it the heart? The heart is a metaphor for something that really has no name, which is probably a quantum state, because it's a state of superposition. It's a state of being in many states at once. And so, can we do that? I think we will move to do that. Perhaps we are already moving to do that by having conversations such as this.
Yeah, wonderful. I thought about that play of word between stupid and stop it. You know? Again, stupidity could create a stupidity. Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
Stop it. That's wonderful. I like that. Stop it, stupid. Yeah. Stop being stupid. That's what we need as human race, all of us.
Stop it, stupid. Stop it. Wonderful, Celia. I don't know if anyone in our bar of every Wednesday want to ask it. Yeah, Reese Trimble.
Yeah, Cecilia, do you think there are any rituals we could do now using this strange oracle? Because obviously, most rituals we need to be physically next to each other, but I wonder if like electronic rituals are possible. What do you think?
I wish I knew. We have tried several rituals with Edwin. Edwin had a wonderful program. You remember that Edwin program where somehow Edwin, because Edwin knows me, he knows, he knew, and I will do it for you, that I should have to be very, very close to one another like this until I'm sure you don't see anything. So I have disappeared. And perhaps if we all disappear into each other electronically, coming very close to our screens, which is such a sorrowful place. And wish with our hearts total love for all that is.
love.
If we open all the mics and we hear our breathing together, let's do that. Let's breathe together.
Yes.
Who is there?
Oh.
Has been cancelled. We will open.
A, B, C, D,
Cry.
E, F, G, H, I, J, K, E, L, E, M, E, N, E, Y, O, P, Q, E, F, E, C, D, U, V, O, P, V,
Arias.
¿Quién está hablando? ¿Quién está hablando?
Y carry on.
Well, that was beautiful. We ceased to be persons and we became something else. So that's the beginning.
Cecilia, it's so beautiful and
Excellent.
powerful. And just keep continuing on and with
We
you with
cease
the
to be persons.
habit of
Thank you,
comedy.
Cecilia.
Thank you so
You know,
much.
big hug to Anne and all the people. Well, you can invite Anne for the next time now. Anne Wallman. Good, fantastic. Please send us the work of the stop with Anne Wallman, please.
Mm.
To be like so beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yes.
for your energy, your healing, your shamanism, your state, your sensibility, your expression, your beauty.
Gracias, amigos. I am very thankful to you all. Thank you. And
Thank you.
let's keep on
Thank
doing.
you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Gracias, gracias,
Thank
Cecilia.
you. Fantastic.
Gracias, Cecilia. Gracias,
Gracias a
Felipe.
todos.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Gracias, amigos.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
That's nice. Chao.
Chao, Cecilia. Muchas gracias.
Chao. Flores.
No queremos irnos.
No.
Es verdad.
Se quiere ir.
We have 3 minutes yet. We have 2 minutes and 45 seconds. At 2 hours.
Let's press the red button.
Yeah.
Okay. Good night.
Stop.
Sí.
Parar.
Stop, stop.
Chao, chao.
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 Gracias.
Ahora el after hour. After hour at
Long.
Dale, no sé cómo se sale.
Felipe, deja el after hour, please. Sí, hola Miriam, tantos años.
Ahora viene el loquín.